My billionaire boss walked past every VIP at the gala. Then he came straight to me, gay love story. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, it is free, and it is the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic and emotional stories like this one. Your support truly means the world to us. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us go back to our main character. You were really going to leave without saying goodbye? The question stopped me 3 feet from the ballroom doors. One hand still wrapped around my coat check ticket, and the other holding a glass of sparkling water I had been pretending was champagne for the last hour. I turned slowly, already knowing the voice. Julian Ashford stood behind me. My boss. My billionaire boss. The man whose photograph appeared in business magazines beside words like visionary and unstoppable was looking at me as if my quiet escape from his charity gala was somehow the most important event happening in Manhattan tonight. This made absolutely no sense. 5 seconds earlier, Julian had entered the ballroom and every important person within 50 feet had practically rearranged themselves around him. A senator had stepped forward. 2 major investors were waiting near the stage. A famous television host had raised her hand in greeting. Julian had acknowledged them politely, then kept walking. Straight toward me. Evan Brooks, 29 years old, community impact employee, owner of exactly one tuxedo tonight, and technically I did not even own that because it had to be returned by noon tomorrow. The ballroom glittered around us beneath enormous crystal chandeliers. Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan stretched into the night, thousands of lights scattered across the skyline. Inside, people wore watches that probably cost more than my annual salary. I had spent most of the evening trying not to touch anything expensive. Now half of those people appeared to be watching us. Mr. Ashford, I managed. Julian's eyebrows lifted slightly. We have worked together for almost 2 years. You can call me Julian. That was new. Dangerous new. Okay, Julian. His name felt strangely personal without the safety of a conference table between us. Were you leaving? He asked. I was attempting a graceful disappearance. You were not succeeding. I noticed. The corner of his mouth moved. Almost a smile. Julian rarely smiled at work. I had once seen an entire department celebrate because he said a presentation was not bad. From him, that was basically a standing ovation. Why are you leaving early? He asked. I glanced toward the crowd behind him. People were waiting for him. Powerful people. People who could probably change stock prices by ordering lunch. Do you not have approximately 300 more important conversations to have? Probably. And yet you are here. His eyes held mine. Calm, focused, uncomfortably sincere. And yet I am here. Something shifted inside my chest, and I immediately told it to behave professionally. Julian stepped a little closer, lowering his voice so the surrounding guests could not hear. I heard something today. My stomach tightened. There it was. The reason. This was not about the gala. It was not about saying goodbye. Julian knew. I looked toward the elevator beyond the ballroom doors, suddenly wishing I had escaped 30 seconds earlier. What did you hear? Julian studied my face for a long moment. Then he said the sentence I had been hoping to avoid until Monday morning. I heard you are leaving the company. 3 months earlier, I had made the questionable career decision to tell Julian Ashford that his numbers were wrong. Technically, the numbers were correct. That was the problem. We were sitting in a glass conference room on the 42nd floor of Ashford Dynamics, surrounded by department heads who had mastered the corporate art of looking deeply interested while saying absolutely nothing. On the screen behind Julian was a budget review for the company foundation. One line had been marked for reduction. Future Access, the technology program my team ran for teenagers from low-income families across New York City. Julian tapped the report with one finger. Participation remains strong, but the measurable outcomes do not justify the current level of funding. My stomach sank. Future Access provided laptops, weekend coding classes, mentorship, and career workshops. To the spreadsheet, it was an expensive program with inconsistent results. To me, it was Tyler Reynolds. Tyler was 16, lived with his mother in Queens, and had arrived at our first workshop convinced everyone else was smarter than him. His mother ran a tiny neighborhood bakery and could not afford a professional website. Tyler spent 4 months learning basic coding and design, then built one for her. Online orders increased. She hired another employee. Tyler discovered he was good at something. None of that fit neatly into Julian's quarterly report. "We will reduce the program by 40% next quarter," Julian said. Nobody moved. I looked around the table. Surely someone would object. Apparently everyone had developed an urgent emotional relationship with their legal pads. I raised my hand. Yes, like I was in middle school. Julian looked directly at me. "Mr. Brooks." Great. He knew my name. Somehow that made this worse. "I think we are measuring the wrong things." The room became so quiet I could hear the air conditioning. Julian leaned back slightly. "Explain." So I told him about Tyler. I told him about the bakery, the website, the confidence that had appeared slowly in a kid who used to sit in the back row and avoid every question. Julian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he glanced toward the financial report. "That is a meaningful outcome, but one individual story cannot determine a multimillion-dollar allocation." "I understand." I should have stopped there. I did not. But if the report cannot recognize what happened to Tyler, maybe the report is incomplete. Someone across the table suddenly became fascinated by his pen. Julian's eyes returned to mine. "Businesses require measurable results. Then maybe we are measuring the wrong things." There it was. My resignation, apparently delivered verbally without my consent. Julian stared at me for several seconds. His expression gave away nothing. Finally, he turned back toward the screen. "The reduction stands." The meeting continued. I spent the remaining 20 minutes mentally calculating how long my savings would cover rent. But nothing happened. Julian did not fire me. He did not reprimand me. He did not even mention the argument again. I assumed I had been forgotten by lunchtime. I was wrong, because while I walked out of that conference room wondering whether I had just damaged my career, Julian remained behind staring at Tyler's program file. And for the first time in years, a billionaire who trusted numbers more than people had been given a question his spreadsheet could not answer. For the next several weeks, I became convinced Julian Ashford was monitoring me. Not in a dramatic way. There were no mysterious black cars outside my apartment, which would have been excessive even by billionaire standards. It was subtler than that. I would speak during a department meeting and catch Julian looking at me from the opposite end of the table. I would cross the lobby carrying program materials and find him watching from beside the elevators. Once, he stopped near my desk while I was organizing scholarship applications and asked, "Working late again, Mr. Brooks?" I nearly confessed to several crimes I had never committed. "Just finishing these applications." His eyes moved over the folders. "Do you always read them personally?" "Every one." "Why?" I looked at him, unsure whether this was a test. "Because somebody should." Julian became quiet. Then he nodded and walked away. I stared after him for a full 10 seconds before my coworker Megan rolled her chair over. "What was that?" "I think he is gathering evidence." "Evidence of what?" "I do not know yet. That is what makes it concerning." Megan laughed. I did not. Mostly. Then the strange encounters continued. Julian saw me help a new intern find the correct conference room. He noticed when I carried donated laptops downstairs because the delivery team was shorthanded. He passed through the lobby while I was talking with Mr. Collins, the evening security guard, about his daughters. College applications. None of those things felt important to me. Apparently, Julian disagreed. One rainy Thursday, I stayed past 8 o'clock reviewing applications for the remaining future access scholarships. Manhattan had dissolved into silver streaks beyond the windows, and the office was quiet enough that every keyboard tap sounded too loud. I was reading Tyler's latest progress report when a paper coffee cup appeared beside my laptop. I looked up. Julian stood there without his suit jacket, his tie loosened slightly, looking unexpectedly human. "Coffee," he said. I stared at the cup, then at him. "Am I being fired?" Julian blinked. "What? You have been watching me for weeks." "I have not been watching you. You know where my desk is now." His mouth twitched. "I am the chief executive officer. I am expected to know where departments are located." That sounds suspiciously reasonable. For the first time, Julian laughed. Not the polite sound executives make at donor dinners. A real laugh. Brief, warm, completely unguarded. It changed his face enough that I forgot what I was going to say. He glanced at Tyler's report on my screen. "How is he doing?" That surprised me even more. "You remember Tyler?" Julian looked almost offended. "You challenged a 40% budget reduction in front of 12 senior executives because of him." "Yes, Evan. I remember Tyler. Evan. Not Mr. Brooks." Something small shifted between us. I looked down at the coffee because suddenly meeting his eyes felt complicated. "He is doing well. His mother's bakery is getting more online orders. He wants to study computer science." Julian nodded slowly. "You remember all of them, do you not?" "I try." "Why?" I thought about the applications covering my desk. "Because people know when they are being treated like numbers." Julian went completely still. For a moment, the rain against the windows was the only sound between us. Then he looked toward the dark city beyond the glass. "Good night, Evan." "Good night, Julian." He walked toward the elevators, leaving the coffee beside me. I watched him go, finally realizing I had misunderstood something important. Julian was not looking for a reason to fire me. He was trying to understand why he kept looking for me at all. Back at the gala, Julian's words settled between us with more weight than anything else in the ballroom. "I heard you are leaving the company." I looked past him toward the chandeliers, the donors, the executives pretending not to watch us. "I was going to submit my resignation Monday." Julian's expression tightened. "Why?" I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because he genuinely looked confused. "Future access is being shut down. The final decision has not been announced. It was in the planning documents this morning." His silence confirmed it. I lowered my voice. "I accepted an offer from Harbor Bridge. They are a nonprofit in Brooklyn. They want me to build technology programs with public schools and community centers." Julian glanced toward the ballroom doors. "Can we speak somewhere quieter?" He led me through a side door onto a private terrace enclosed by glass panels. Manhattan stretched below us, bright and endless, while the noise of the gala softened behind the doors. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Julian turned toward me. "Stay." One word, simple enough to be dangerous. "Julian, I can restore the program." I stared at him. "What?" 3 years of funding. Guaranteed. We can expand the scholarship budget and add 2 full-time positions. He spoke faster now, as if he had finally found familiar ground. "I can also promote you to director. You would have authority over the program, a larger budget, and a substantial salary increase." There it was. The billionaire solution. Find the problem. Assign a number. Make it disappear. 6 months earlier, that offer would have sounded impossible to refuse. Tonight, it made something inside me sink. "You think I am leaving because I want more money?" "No. I think you are leaving because you believe the work no longer matters here. I am telling you that I can change that. Because I am leaving." Julian paused. "Yes." I looked through the glass at the ballroom. People were still waiting for him. Investors, donors, board members. He could walk back inside and have a dozen people competing to say yes to him. Maybe that was the problem. "Do you know what bothers me?" I asked. "Tell me." "You listened when I talked about Tyler. You remembered him. You started asking about the students. Somewhere along the way, I thought maybe you understood." "I do understand." "Then why did it take my resignation to make their program worth saving?" Julian had no immediate answer. The silence between us changed. "I can fix this," he said finally. "That is exactly what you keep doing." His brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "You fix everything with resources. funding, titles, salaries. You make an offer so generous that saying no becomes irrational. I am trying to give you what you want. No. My voice softened. You are giving me reasons I cannot afford to leave. Have you ever considered giving me a reason I would actually want to stay? Julian went still. For the first time that night, the confidence disappeared from his face. I could see him searching for an answer that was not financial, strategic, or measurable. He did not find one. That hurt more than I expected. I stepped toward the door. Evan. I stopped but did not turn. Is money really the only language you know? Behind me, Julian said nothing. And somehow his silence answered the question better than words could. Monday morning arrived with all the warmth of an audit. I had barely set my coffee beside my keyboard when an invitation appeared on my calendar. Julian Ashford. 10 o'clock. Private meeting. No agenda. Nothing inspires confidence like a billionaire requesting your presence without explaining why. At 9:58, I walked into his office carrying my resignation letter. Julian stood beside the windows overlooking Manhattan, jacket off, sleeves neatly buttoned, looking as if he had spent the weekend arguing with himself and neither side had won. His eyes dropped immediately to the envelope in my hand. You brought it. I said I would. He nodded toward the seating area instead of his desk. That surprised me. Julian usually conducted meetings from behind a surface large enough to establish its own zip code. Today, he sat across from me with nothing between us. Before you submit that, he said, I need to ask you something. I waited for another offer. More money, a better title, perhaps naming rights to a conference room. Instead, Julian looked directly at me and asked, what did I do wrong? For several seconds, I genuinely had no response. You are asking me? Yes. Voluntarily. His mouth tightened. Evan. I am adjusting to the experience. A faint smile appeared, then disappeared. At the gala, I thought I was solving the problem. You made it clear I was not. I looked down at the envelope. I am not a problem to solve, Julian. I know. And I do not want to become your project. You are not. Then do not treat me like something you can secure with a better offer. Julian absorbed that without interrupting. So I continued. If I stayed after you doubled the budget and promoted me, I would always wonder why I got those things. Was it because I earned them, or because you wanted me nearby? Every time I disagreed with you, I would wonder whether my job depended on how you felt about me. His expression shifted. It would not. You cannot promise that feelings never affect decisions. He looked away for a moment. No, I suppose I cannot. That admission mattered. Julian Ashford was not a man famous for saying he could not do something. Harbor Bridge is offering me less money, I said. A lot less, actually. My apartment and I have already begun difficult negotiations. But they are hiring me because they believe I can build something. I need to know what I can become without your influence deciding the answer. Julian nodded slowly. Then you should take the job. I stared at him. That is it. No. His voice softened. It is simply the part where I stop making my feelings your responsibility. My heart stumbled over that sentence. Your feelings. Julian looked at me, and for once there was no executive mask to hide behind. I noticed you because you challenged me. Then I kept noticing you because you remember people everyone else overlooks. You make rooms feel different when you are in them. He paused. I care about you, Evan. More personally than I should have allowed myself to while I was your boss. The office seemed suddenly too quiet. Julian, you do not owe me an answer. He glanced at the resignation letter. And you certainly do not owe me your career. I swallowed. I am still leaving. Pain crossed his face, brief but unmistakable. Then he nodded. I know. I stood and placed the envelope on the table. Julian did not reach for it. At the door, I looked back. For what it is worth, asking what you did wrong was a good start. His smile was small and tired. I was afraid you would say that. I left his office with my resignation submitted and my future uncertain. But for the first time, Julian had offered me something that did not have a dollar sign attached to it. The truth. My final week at Ashford Dynamics should have been about transition notes, farewell lunches, and figuring out how to carry 2 years of office clutter home without admitting that most of it was coffee mugs. Instead, on Wednesday afternoon, Megan appeared beside my desk holding a foundation report. "You need to read this." I looked at the cover. If this is another budget document, I have officially developed an allergy. Page 6. I opened it. Future Access had been restored with 3 years of funding, expanded scholarships, and a new independent board that would oversee program decisions. Ashford Dynamics would provide financial support without controlling student selection or daily operations. I read the page twice. When was this approved? This morning. Did Julian know you were bringing this to me? I found it in the internal foundation update. Megan studied my face. You already resigned, Evan. This is not about keeping you. That sentence followed me for the rest of the day. After work, I went downstairs to the foundation archive to find the original Future Access proposal. Instead, I found something older. A faded newspaper clipping had been preserved inside the foundation's first planning binder. The photograph showed a 17-year-old Julian standing beside a tired-looking man in a grocery store uniform. The headline described Julian as a local scholarship recipient preparing to become the first person in his family to attend college. I had terrible hair. I turned. Julian stood in the doorway. I looked back at the photograph. I was trying to be polite. You were failing. He walked closer and looked at the clipping. The humor faded from his face. That is my father. He worked mornings at a warehouse and evenings at that grocery store. I waited. Julian rarely volunteered anything personal. We were never completely without, he continued. But money was always something we had to calculate. Groceries, rent, electricity. College was not realistic until someone I had never met funded a scholarship. I looked at him. That is why you created the foundation. He nodded. I wanted to become the person who opened that door for someone else. What happened? Julian gave a quiet breath that almost became a laugh. I became very successful at running companies. There was no pride in the sentence. Eventually, every decision became a metric. Cost per student, completion rates, quarterly outcomes. I told myself that was responsibility. His eyes settled on the old photograph. Then you told me maybe I was measuring the wrong things. I thought about the revised report upstairs. Did you restore Future Access because of me? Julian met my eyes. You made me look again, but I restored it because closing it was wrong. Even though I am still leaving? Especially because you are still leaving. That answer landed quietly. No grand gesture. No hidden bargain. He had changed something important without knowing whether it would bring me back. The independent board was your idea? I asked. Yes. If the program matters, it should survive my blind spots. I smiled despite myself. That sounds suspiciously healthy. I am experimenting. I laughed and Julian smiled too. For a moment, we were simply two men standing beside a photograph of the teenager he used to be. I think 17-year-old you would be proud, I said. Julian looked at the clipping, then back at me. I am trying to become someone he would recognize. That was when I understood the difference. Julian was no longer changing because he wanted me to stay. He was changing because he finally remembered why becoming powerful had mattered to him in the first place. Friday arrived with a cardboard box on my desk and the uncomfortable realization that 2 years of my professional life could fit inside something originally used to ship printer paper. By 5 o'clock, most of the team had already said goodbye. Megan hugged me twice, made me promise to visit, then stole the desk plant she claimed I would forget to water anyway. It deserves stability, she said. I am leaving for a nonprofit, not disappearing into the wilderness. Same salary difference. I laughed. But when the office finally quieted, the humor faded. I packed Tyler's first thank you card beside my notebooks and took one last look around. I had wanted to leave. I still knew leaving was right. Apparently, knowing something was right did not make it painless. I carried the box toward the elevators and pressed the button. Evan. I stopped. Julian was walking toward me alone. No assistant. No folder. No executive urgency. Just Julian, his jacket folded over one arm, looking strangely uncertain. He stopped a few feet away. "Do you have a minute?" "I have approximately 1 minute before this box destroys my posture." Julian reached toward it, then stopped himself. "Would you like me to carry it?" The question caught me off guard. A month ago, he would have simply taken it or arranged for someone else to do it. "I have it," I said. He nodded. "All right." The elevator arrived, but I did not step inside. Julian took a slow breath. "I wanted to say something before you left." My heart immediately became unhelpful. "Okay." "At the gala, you asked whether money was the only language I knew." "I remember." "I hated that question." "I remember that too." A small smile touched his face. Then he looked at me with an openness I had never seen in the boardroom. "But you were right. I kept trying to give you reasons to stay because giving was easier than admitting why I wanted you here." I tightened my grip on the box. Julian continued. "My days became better when you were in them, Evan. Meetings became less predictable. This building felt less." He searched for the word. "Empty." Neither of us spoke for a moment. "I care about you," he said, "and I wish the circumstances were different. But they are not. I was your boss and you chose a future outside this company. I will respect that." My throat tightened. What if I have feelings too? The question escaped before I could reconsider it. Julian's expression changed, hope appearing so quickly it almost hurt to see. But he did not step closer. "Then they will still be there when you have had time to build the life you chose." I stared at him. "You are not going to ask me to stay?" "No." "No final offer?" "No." "Not even an absurd salary increase?" His smile returned. "I am showing remarkable restraint." I laughed softly. The elevator doors opened again. This time Julian stepped aside, leaving the path clear. That simple movement said more than every offer he had made at the gala. I entered the elevator and turned toward him. "Goodbye, Julian." His eyes held mine. "Goodbye, Evan." The doors began to close. For months, Julian had tried to prove he cared by offering me more. In the end, he proved it by asking for nothing. And as the elevator carried me down toward the street and the new life waiting beyond those glass doors, I realized something that frightened me far more than leaving ever had. For the first time, I was free to choose anything I wanted, and part of me was already wondering whether one day I might choose him. 3 months later, I had learned 2 important things about working at Harbor Bridge. First, meaningful work did not require a 42nd floor conference room. Second, our coffee machine was actively opposed to human happiness. The nonprofit occupied 2 floors of an old brick building in Brooklyn, where the heating system made mysterious noises and every department shared one printer that behaved according to its own moral code. I loved it. I spent my days meeting teachers, visiting community centers, and building technology workshops around what neighborhoods actually needed. My decisions were mine. My mistakes were mine too, which was less exciting but probably healthy. Future Access had also changed. With its independent board established, Harbor Bridge became one of its community partners, and the first new scholarships were awarded that fall. The ceremony took place in a neighborhood arts center in Brooklyn. Folding chairs filled the main room. Parents balanced phones in their hands, students stood beside laptops displaying their projects, and volunteers hurried between tables carrying cookies and extension cords. Nothing matched. Everything mattered. Tyler found me near the stage. He had grown another inch and was wearing a tie he clearly considered a personal insult. "Mr. Brooks, look." He opened his laptop and showed me a redesigned website for his mother's bakery. "Online orders are up again." "That is amazing." "She is paying me now." I placed a hand over my heart. "A professional. I knew you would leave me behind eventually." Tyler grinned and disappeared toward his mother. That was when I saw Julian. He stood near the back wall in a simple navy suit, alone beside a table covered with student projects. No assistant, no photographers, no group of executives orbiting him. A teenage girl was explaining an application she had designed to help older residents find free transportation services. Julian listened carefully, asked her a question, then waited for the full answer. He did not look toward the donors. He did not check his phone. He was simply present. Something warm settled in my chest. For 3 months, Julian had kept his distance. He had not called. He had not sent gifts. He had not manufactured reasons for meetings. The only evidence of him in my new life was the program itself, functioning exactly as he had promised without his interference. Then Julian looked across the room and saw me. His expression changed. Just slightly, but I knew that expression now. Surprise first, then warmth, then the careful restraint of a man determined not to assume anything. He stayed where he was. I almost laughed. Of course he did. The man who once crossed an entire ballroom because he could not let me leave was now waiting for me to decide whether I wanted to cross one for him. So I did. I passed 2 donors, my executive director, and Tyler, who gave me a suspiciously delighted look. Julian watched me approach. "Evan," he said when I stopped in front of him. "Julian, you appear busy." I was. His eyebrows lifted. "Was?" Smiled. "You crossed a room for me once." I figured it was my turn. For several seconds, the billionaire who could negotiate multimillion-dollar deals seemed to forget how conversation worked. It was deeply satisfying. "How is Harbor Bridge?" he finally asked. "Chaotic, meaningful, financially terrifying. The coffee is unforgivable." Julian laughed. "And you are happy?" I nodded. "I am." He smiled without sadness. And that was when I knew I was ready. There was no salary between us now. No promotion. No office hierarchy. Just 2 men standing in a crowded community center, free to decide what came next. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" I asked. Julian blinked. "With me?" "No, Julian." I crossed the room to ask the folding chairs. His laugh came easily this time. "Yes, Evan. I would like that." I glanced toward the students filling the room, then back at him. "Good. But I am choosing the coffee shop." "Why?" "Because you still have things to learn about spending less than $10. And when we walked back toward the celebration together, neither of us was leading. We were simply walking side by side. Coffee became dinner, dinner became weekend walks through Brooklyn, and somewhere between Julian learning that a good bagel did not require a reservation and me learning that expensive restaurants sometimes served portions visible without a microscope, we became something real. Julian never rushed it. That mattered. He asked before helping. He listened before offering solutions. When Harbor Bridge needed new computers, he did not quietly buy them. He asked whether the organization wanted Ashford Dynamics to submit a formal sponsorship proposal like everyone else. I teased him about his progress. Secretly, I loved him for it. A year after I left the company, we returned to the same Manhattan ballroom where everything had begun. The chandeliers still glittered. The skyline still stretched beyond the windows. Powerful guests still moved through the room carrying conversations worth more money than I could comfortably imagine. But I was different. I was not standing near the exit in a rented tuxedo, wondering whether I belonged. I was there representing Harbor Bridge and Future Access, which now served hundreds of students through schools and community centers across New York City. I had earned my seat at the table. Across the ballroom, Julian finished speaking with a group of donors and found me in the crowd. His expression softened immediately. He walked toward me, but this time he did not ignore everyone else along the way. He shook hands. He listened. He even remembered the name of a donor's daughter. I was almost suspicious. "Who are you? And what have you done with Julian Ashford?" I asked when he reached me. "I have been informed that people appreciate being acknowledged." "Remarkable discovery." He smiled and extended his hand toward mine, then stopped just short of touching me. Even after a year, he still left that final inch for me. Choice. Always choice. I closed the distance and took his hand. Across the room, applause suddenly rose near the student showcase. Tyler stood beside a large screen presenting a new ordering platform he had designed for small neighborhood businesses. His mother watched from the front row, smiling so proudly that I felt my throat tighten. Julian followed my gaze. "You were right about him," he said. "No." I squeezed his hand gently. "Tyler was right about himself. He just needed someone to give him a door. Julian became quiet. Years earlier, someone had opened that door for him. Then success had almost made him forget what it felt like to stand outside one. Now he was helping hold doors open without deciding who deserved to walk through them. That mattered more than any romantic gesture he could have purchased. "Coffee after this?" Julian asked. "The place in Brooklyn? The one where you complained about the chairs?" "I was making an observation. You said they were structurally pessimistic." "They were." I laughed and he laughed with me. For so long, I had believed independence meant needing nothing from anyone. Julian had believed love meant providing everything. We had both been wrong. Love was not rescue. It was not ownership. It was not making yourself so necessary that another person could never leave. Love was standing beside someone while they became more fully themselves. It was offering a hand without closing it around them. It was knowing the door was open and trusting that they might still choose to stay. Julian looked at me beneath those familiar golden lights. No longer my boss and never my savior. Simply the man I loved. "Ready?" he asked. I looked once more at Tyler, at the students, at the room where my life had changed, then back at Julian. "Ready." Together, we walked toward the doors, side by side, neither following nor leading, both completely free, and still choosing the same direction.